In the farthest corners of the galaxy, the D had once been a thriving civilization respected and admired by many. Their cities were full of life. Their technology was advanced and their knowledge of the universe was unmatched. For centuries the D were a beacon of peace and wisdom in the galaxy, sharing their discoveries with others. They had no interest in wars or conflicts, always focusing on building a better future. But everything changed when the Great Galactic War broke out. The D, unwilling to get involved in the conflict, decided to stay neutral. They refused to choose sides, believing that violence and destruction were not the answer to the galaxy's problems. The other races, however, saw this as a betrayal. They couldn't understand how a race as powerful as the Trari could simply stand by while the galaxy tore itself apart. The Galactic Council, powerful group made up of the most influential species in the galaxy, declared that the D's refusal to participate was unacceptable. They demanded that the D join the war effort or face isolation. But the D stood firm in their decision. They would not fight, and so the Council abandoned them one by one. The D found themselves cast out. The once proud cities now lay empty, their citizens scattered to the far reaches of the G galaxy. The few remaining D tried to survive on their home world, but with no allies and no support, it was becoming increasingly difficult. Their technology, once so advanced, was now falling apart, and their resources were running low. The planet's climate had begun to change, growing harsher with each passing year. The once lush forests were now dry and cracked, and the rivers that had once flowed freely had turned into nothing more than trickles of water. There were a dying people abandoned by the galaxy they had once helped shape. In the midst of this despair, a single hope remained. A small group of D scientists had been working on a way to reach out to other civilizations, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear their plea for help. They had developed a long-range communication system, a powerful signal capable of reaching across vast distances. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The scientists sent out the message, hoping that it would find its way to someone who cared. They had no way of knowing who might hear it or whether it would even reach anyone, but they knew they had to try. The message was simple: we are the D, a forgotten race. We are in need. Please help us. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The D waited, but nothing came. They were beginning to lose hope, convinced that their signal had been ignored, just like everything else in their lives. It seemed that even the galaxy itself had forgotten them. But then something unexpected happened. In the depths of space, a human ship, the Talon, picked up the faint signal. The crew stationed on the edge of the galaxy were scanning the stars when the message flashed across their screens. Commander Rachel Everett, non-nonsense leader with years of experience, was the first to see it. The signal was weak, but it was clear enough to make out the words. At first Rachel thought it was a mistake. There were so many transmissions in space, many of them from other races, most of them irrelevant or meaningless, but this one was different. She could feel it. Without hesitation, Rachel ordered her crew to investigate the source. It was a long shot, but they had the resources and the will to give it a try. They had no idea who these D were, or if they even still existed, but something about their message struck a chord with Rachel. She couldn't ignore it. The decision wasn't popular with everyone on the ship. Some of the crew members thought it was a waste of time. Others were concerned about the risks involved. After all, space was a dangerous place, and the last thing they needed was to get involved in something that might not even be real. But Rachel was firm humanity had always been the underdog in the galaxy, but time and time again they had proven their worth. If anyone could help, it was them. And so, with little more than a faint hope and a stubborn determination, they Talon 6 set course for the Devar home world. The crew had no idea what awaited them, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the ship sped through the stars, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything. The galaxy had forgotten the D, but humanity hadn't, and Rachel Everett was about to prove that sometimes, even in the darkest times, a little bit of hope could make all the difference. As the Talon 6 traveled deeper into the unknown regions of space, Commander Rachel Everett couldn't help but feel the weight of the mission on her shoulders. The crew, diverse group of humans from all walks of life, worked tirelessly to keep the ship running smoothly. But despite their hard work, a sense of uncertainty hung in the air. They were heading toward a distant, uncharted planet with little idea of what they would find. Rettel stood in the command center, staring out at the stars. The silence of space was almost deafening, and the constant hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that broke it. Her mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. She had always been the kind of leader who faced challenges head on, but this mission felt different. The signal from the D was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was a cry for help, a plea from a forgotten race. Rachel had made the decision to answer that call, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were walking into the unknown. Her second in command, Lieutenant James Carter, approached her with a data pad in hand. Commander, he said, his voice steady, we're on course, should be in orbit around their planet in about 24 hours. WR nodded, but she couldn't hide the concern in her eyes, and the rest of the crew any concerns. Carter hesitated for a moment before replying, there's a lot of skepticism, Commander. Not everyone is convinced we should be going out this far for a race we know nothing about. Some people think this is a waste of resources. Rachel turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. I know, but we can't just ignore a cry for help, James. No one else is going to answer it. Humanity may be young in the grand scheme of the galaxy, but we've always been the ones to stand up when no one else will. Carter gave a slight smile. I don't doubt that for a second, Commander. The next day, the Talon 6 entered orbit around the Draver home world. The planet, once full of life and beauty, now appeared barren and desolate from space. The blue oceans had turned a dull shade of brown, and the lush green landscapes were replaced with dry, cracked earth. It was a stark contrast to the image the crew had imagined based on the transmission they had received. Commander, we're receiving more signals, reported IGN Maria Lau from communications. It's faint, but there's something else out. They're trying to reach us again. Rachel's heart quickened. The D were still alive, still hoping for help. She turned to Carter. Prepare a shuttle, we're going down. As the shuttle descended through the thick atmosphere, Rachel and her team couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. They were the first outsiders to land on D soil in centuries. They were about to meet a race that had been abandoned by the galaxy, and it was up to humanity to help them rebuild their world. The shuttle landed gently on the cracked ground. As the doors opened, the crew was greeted by a harsh, dry wind. The landscape was bleak, but there were signs of life, small, struggling plants poking through the soil, and the faint hum of activity in the distance. Rachel's boots sank slightly into the dust as she led her team out of the shuttle and toward the nearest settlement. The settlement, if it could be called that, was a cluster of crumbling buildings. The D people were few in number, their faces worn and tired. It was clear they had been living in hardship for a long time. They watched the humans approach with a mix of curiosity and weariness. To them, humans were just another species in a galaxy full of strangers. They had been betrayed by the galaxy once before. Why should they trust these newcomers? Rettel stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. We come in friendship, she said, her voice carrying over the quiet. We heard your message. We are here to help. The D leader, an elderly figure with pale green skin and sharp Angus features, stepped forward. His eyes were filled with both hope and skepticism. He had seen too many promises broken, too many words spoken in vain. But there was something about Rachel's presence, something in her eyes, that made him wonder if this time would be different. You are humans, the D later said, his voice deep and raspy. Why would you help us? The galaxy has turned its back on us. Why would you risk your lives for a people who have been forgotten? Rettel met his gaze without hesitation. Because we don't leave others behind. Humanity may be young, but we've learned that kindness and hope are the only things worth fighting for. You don't have to be alone anymore. The Dra leader studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. Perhaps you are telling the truth. Perhaps you are the answer we have been waiting for. With that, the fragile bridge of trust was built. The D cautiously accepted the human help, and the two species began to work together. Side by side, it was clear that the Dra had much to offer: advanced knowledge of technology, medicine, and environmental restoration. But it was also clear that they needed the strength and determination of humanity to help them rebuild. As the sun set over the damaged world, Rachel stood beside the Diver leader, looking out over the horizon. The stars above seemed brighter tonight, as though they were no longer alone in the darkness for the first time in a long while. The D felt a glimmer of hope, and for humanity this was just the beginning of something greater. Together they would face the challenges ahead, and perhaps together they would show the galaxy what true strength and compassion really meant. The days on the Diver home world passed in a blur of activity. The Talon 6 crew worked alongside the D, repairing their broken infrastructure and helping them rebuild what had been lost. It was not an easy task. The planet's resources were limited, and many of the D's advanced technologies had decayed beyond repair. But the humans were determined to help. They brought with them not only tools and machines, but also a fresh perspective. Humanity's resilience and innovation were their greatest strengths. Commander Rachel Everett led the charge, keeping the crew focused and united as they worked. But it was clear to her that this wasn't just about rebuilding the D world, it was about rebuilding trust. The D had been abandoned by everyone they had once trusted. For them, it was hard to believe that anyone, especially a species as young as humanity, would offer help without expecting something in return. One evening, as Rachel stood on the edge of the settlement overlooking the work, Crew's Lieutenant James Carter joined her. The quiet evening air was thick with dust, but the horizon still offered a glimmer of hope. The setting sun casting an orange glow across the bare landscape. Do you think they'll ever truly trust us? Carter asked, his voice quiet but thoughtful. Rettel looked at the Verizon, considering the question. I think they want to. They've been hurt for so long, and it's hard for anyone to open up After that, but we're here and we're not going anywhere. We just have to prove that we're different. Carter nodded. I'm with you, Commander. We all are. Just then, a Dever worker approached them carrying a bundle of strange glowing stones. They were small, but their colors shifted and shimmered like fireflies in the evening light. These are the last of our energy reserves, the D said, his voice soft. We've been saving them, hoping for something, but now it seems you have brought us hope. Rachel took the stones, carefully examining them. They were beautiful, but their purpose was unclear. She looked up at the D. What are these used for? They power our most important machines, the worker explained. Our farming systems, our water purifiers, even our communications. But they are almost gone, and without them we are unable to restore our planet. Rachel held the stones in her hands, feeling the weight of their importance. We'll find a way to restore them. We won't let you run out of hope. Over the next few days, Rachel worked with the scientists to examine the glowing stones. It was difficult, but the humans' ingenuity and the D's knowledge of energy systems combined in unexpected ways. After countless hours of research, in trial and error, they discovered a way to use the stones to create a sustainable energy source, one that could power their settlement for generations to come. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The D began to believe that humanity might actually be able to help them rebuild their world. They saw the effort the humans were putting in, and more importantly, they saw that the humans cared, but trust was still fragile. There were some D who couldn't shake their doubts. They had seen too many races come and go, promising help only to disappear. Here, when the J got tough, the scars of betrayal ran deep. One night, as Rachel was overseeing repairs to one of the settlement's crumbling buildings, the D leader approached her. He was older now, his green skin more weathered by time and hardship, but his eyes still held a sharpness, a determination that had not faded despite everything he had lost. Commander Everett, the draw leader said, his voice low, you and your people have done much for us, but there are some among us who still question your motives. They believe you are not here out of kindness, but for your own gain. Rettel met his gaze, her expression serious but open. I understand their concerns. I can't change the past, but I can show them that we are here to help. We're not asking for anything in return. We believe in what's right, and we believe in you. The TR leader studied her for a moment before speaking again. I know, but I must ask, what is it that you hope to gain from all this? Why are you helping us when no one else will? Rettel didn't hesitate. Because we believe that every life matters, because we believe that when one race falls, it's the responsibility of others to step in. The galaxy may have forgotten you, but humanity hasn't. We will not leave you behind. For the first time in a long while, the D leader's eyes softened. He nodded slowly, as if weighing her words. Perhaps you are different. The following morning, the D began to open up more. They shared their knowledge of the planet's history, their culture, and their hopes for the future. The humans in turn shared their own stories of their struggles, their dreams, and the lessons they had learned along the way. It was the beginning of a true partnership, one built on mutual respect and understanding. As the days turned into weeks, the settlement grew stronger. The D people no longer viewed the humans as strangers. They began to see them as allies, people who had risked everything to help them when no one else would. And though the road ahead would still be difficult, Rachel knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy may have abandoned the D, but humanity had shown them that they were not alone and with, that a new chapter began. For both the D and humanity the progress. On D was undeniable the Talon 6 crew. Along with the D had worked tirelessly. For weeks in that short time the settlement transformed where there had once been crumbling buildings and empty streets. New homes were rising powered by the sustainable energy that humans and Trari have developed together. Food was once again growing in the fields and clean water flowed freely from the restored purification systems. The D had been given a second chance and they were beginning to believe in it. Despite the many improvements, there was still a sense of uncertainty in the air. The Divar, although grateful, were still hesitant to trust fully. It had been a long time since anyone had offered them anything without expecting something. Return. The scars of their past were deep, and they carried those wounds as a constant reminder that they could not be easily healed. Commander Rachel Everett knew this, and she understood. She had seen firsthand how reluctant the Trari were to fully embrace humanity's the small victories were important, but the true challenge was earning the trust that would turn the fragile alliance into something lasting. She couldn't blame the D for their caution, but she hoped that time, coupled with humanity's determination, would prove their sincerity. One morning, as Rachel walked through the bustling settlement, she noticed a group of young D children playing in the newly repaired plaza. Their laughter filled the air, a sound that had been absent for far too long. It was a sign of hope, a sign that the future was looking brighter. Commander Everett, a voice called from behind her. It was Lieutenant Carter, his face serious but hopeful. We've been making more progress. The D are starting to open up about their history. I think we're getting closer to understanding their real needs. Rachel turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. That's good to hear, James. The more we know about them, the better we can help. Carter hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's something else I need to mention. We've been hearing rumors some of the D leaders are starting to discuss the possibility of reaching out to other races in the galaxy. They're considering reestablishing contact with the galactic community. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. The idea of the D opening up to the galaxy again was a major step forward. But there were risks. The galaxy had abandoned them once before, and there was no guarantee that other races would welcome them back. Worse yet, there were factions that might try to exploit the TR's weakened state. I knew this day would come, Rachel said quietly, her mind already racing through the possibilities. But we can't let them rush into this without thinking it through. They need to understand that not all races will be as willing to help as humanity has been. Carter nodded. I'll speak with them, Commander. I think it's important that we guide them through this process if they're truly going to re-enter galactic affairs. They'll need to be ready for what comes next. Rachel appreciated Carter's insight. He had a way of seeing things from different angles, and she trusted his judgment. Let's keep working on strengthening our bond with the D. The more we show them that we're here for the long haul, the better chance they'll have of succeeding when the time comes to reach out to others. Over the next few days, the crew focused on furthering their work with the D. Together they developed more advanced energy systems, improved medical treatments, and restored communication networks. The humans didn't just offer technology, they offered knowledge, strategies, and even the lessons they had learned from their own struggles. The DN taught the humans about their culture, their history, and their unique Perspective on the galaxy one afternoon. As Rachel sat in a quiet corner of the settlement central hall, the Dever leader approached her. He had changed in the time since they first met. His face was softer, his eyes no longer filled with suspicion. There was a new respect in his gaze. Commander Everett, he began, his voice calm and steady. We've discussed the future of our people. We've talked about reaching out to other races, but we cannot do it alone. We need guidance. We need your wisdom and your strength to show us the way. Rachel felt a surge of pride in her chest. This was a moment she had been waiting for. The D were no longer looking at humanity as a stranger, but as a trusted ally. They had come to understand that humanity was not like the other races who had turned their back on them. They had come to see humanity's potential, not only as a species but as a partner in rebuilding their world. We will be with you every step of the way, Rachel replied, her voice filled with sincerity. You've come this far, and we will make sure you don't have to face the galaxy alone. The Draw leader nodded slowly. I knew you were different, Commander. Perhaps we too were wrong to think we were alone in the galaxy. There is strength in unity, and maybe humanity can lead the way. As Rachel left the meeting, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time they had a genuine chance at a brighter future, and humanity, with all its flaws and struggles, had played a pivotal role in making that possible. The alliance between humanity and the D was still new, still fragile, but it was growing stronger each day. Together they were building not just a planet, but a future, and Rachel knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger, an alliance that could one day change the course of galactic history. As the months passed, the relationship between the D and humanity grew stronger. The settlement on Dra's home world continued to flourish, and the people, once broken by years of neglect, now felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. The streets were filled with activity. The air was thick with laughter, and the once empty fields were now green with crops. Humanity had given them more than just resources, they had given them hope. But despite the many successes, Commander Rachel Everett knew that the true test was still ahead. The D were on the cusp of a major decision, one that would change the course of their future. They were debating whether to re-enter the galactic community, to reach out to other races, and to seek alliances that would secure their place in the universe once again. It was a risky move. The galaxy had abandoned them once before, and there was no guarantee that the other races would welcome them back with open arms. Rachel knew this better than anyone. She had seen the dark side of galactic politics during her years of service, and she knew the dangers that awaited the D if they rushed into a new alliance without careful preparation. The galaxy wasn't kind to those who were weak, and the D had been weakened by years of isolation. One evening, as Rachel sat in her quarters aboard the Talent 6, she reviewed the latest reports from the Dever leadership. The debate was intensifying. Some of the Dever leaders were eager to reach out to the galaxy, hoping that they could rebuild their reputation and secure the help they needed. Others, however, were more cautious. They had seen too much betrayal, too much destruction. They feared that reaching out could lead to another abandonment or worse, exploitation. Commander, you need to see this, Lieutenant James Carter said. Entering the room, his expression was serious, and his voice carried an urgency that made Rachel immediately sit up. What's happened? Redell asked, motioning For him to sit, Carter placed a data pad on the table and activated at the screen. Displayed a series of encrypted messages, all originating from various factions within the galactic community. The messages were scattered, coming from different sources, but they all carried a common thread: warnings. They know we're helping the D. Carter said, his voice low. And some of them don't like it. There are rumors about some races trying to sway the D to their side, offering them false promises. They want to use the D's desperation to their advantage. Rachel's brow furrowed as she scared, and the messages, the situation was more complicated than she had imagined. If the D reached out to the wrong people, they could be manipulated or betrayed. The stakes were higher than ever. We need to warn them, Rachel said, her voice firm, but we also need to make sure the D understand what they're up against. They can't make this decision lightly. The next day, Rachel met with the Draver leaders in the central hall of the settlement. The room was filled with the hum of quiet conversation as the Draw leaders discussed their future, their voices filled with hope and uncertainty. Commander Everett, the D leader said, rising from his seat, we've heard the rumors. We know there are forces in the galaxy who may try to take advantage of us, but we cannot stay in isolation forever. Our people are dying, and we need allies. We need the strength of the galaxy. Wretch looked him in the eye, her expression serious. I understand your need for allies, but you must be cautious. Not all races will treat you with the same kindness humanity has shown you. Some will seek to exploit your weaknesses. We know, the Draw leader said, his voice steady, but we believe we are ready. The galaxy may have abandoned us once, but we cannot live in fear forever. We must take this step, or we will be lost. Redel felt a pang of concern, but she knew that the D were right. They could not remain hidden forever. The galaxy was vast, and to rebuild they needed to make their presence known, but the question remained, would they be able to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics and find true allies? We will support you, Rachel said, her voice unwavering, but you need to be prepared for the challenges ahead. We'll be there to help, but the final choice must be yours. The D leader nodded, a look of determination in his eyes. Then we will reach out to the galaxy, but we will do so with caution. We will not be fooled again. As Rachel left the meeting, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The decision to reach out to the galaxy was a monumental one, and it came with risks that couldn't be ignored, but at the same time she knew that the D had no other choice. Their future depended on it. The days that followed were filled with intense preparations. The D sent out carefully worded messages to various races in the galaxy seeking potential allies. The Talon 6 crew worked around the clock to ensure that the D were ready for the challenges ahead. They built secure communication systems, developed strategies for negotiation, and made plans for every possible outcome. But despite all their efforts, Rachel couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that even with all the preparation, they couldn't control the galaxy's response. The D had no idea what they were about to face, and neither did humanity. But one thing was certain, that galaxy was about to change forever. Weeks passed after the Trar sent their message into the galaxy, and the air was filled with both excitement and anxiety. It was the first time in centuries that the Dry were reaching out for help, for alliances. They were putting their trust in the galaxy once again, hoping for a future that they could not build alone. Humanity, though protective and cautious, stood beside them, ready to offer support, but there was still an undeniable tension in the air. The unknown awaited. Commander Rachel Everett paced around the command center aboard the Talon 6, her eyes glued to the communication console. The messages had started coming in. Some were warm, encouraging, even offering promises of assistance. Others, however, were colder, more guarded. Rachel couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Humanity's first step into the unknown was taking a new turn. We're getting more responses, Commander Lieutenant Carter said, breaking her thoughts. Several species have agreed to meet. It's happening faster than we expected. Rachel nodded, but didn't smile. The gravity of the situation was not lost on her. This wasn't just a matter of making new friends, it was a matter of survival, not just for the Trary, but for humanity as well. If things went wrong, the consequences could be disastrous. The first diplomatic meeting was scheduled for the following week. The TRAR, with Rachel's guidance, chose their representatives carefully. They would be led by the D Council, the most respected leaders of their race, including the same leader who had reached out to humanity for aid. Accompanying them would be Rachel, Lieutenant Carter, and a small team of humans trained in galactic diplomacy. The meeting was to take place aboard a neutral space station on the edge of the known galaxy, a place where many different species could come and talk without fear of aggression or betrayal. It was as safe as a first meeting could be. The day arrived, and the Drari and humans gathered on the Talon 6 bridge. Tension was thick in the air, but there was also a sense of hope. The crew stood by, monitoring every transmission as the ship approached the station. As they docked, the first of their guests arrived, a sleek, tall species with silver skin and sharp features. One of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Their leader, dignified figure named Aloes, stepped onto the station with a calm and serious demeanor. Rachel met him with a firm handshake, though she could see the hidden weariness in his eyes. Welcome, Aloes. We are honored by your presence. Aloes nodded slightly. The galaxy has much to discuss. Let us see if the D are truly worthy of our attention. The Mir were known for their intelligence and their ability to manipulate political landscapes. They were both respected and feared. Al's words were a challenge, but Rettel didn't back down. The D leader, who stood beside her, was visibly nervous, but he held his composure. We are ready to prove our worth. We come not with demands, but with hope, a hope for a future where we can contribute to the galaxy once more. The meeting proceeded with formalities, and both sides shared their positions. The D spoke of their struggles and their hopes for the future, while Aloes and his delegates remained quiet, listening intently. Rachel stood back, allowing the D to speak for themselves, but she kept a close watch on Aloes. His silence was telling. Hours passed. The discussions grew more complex as they moved from formal greetings to the core of their negotiations. The D wanted help rebuilding their planet, and they hoped for security against the possible threats they had faced in the past. In exchange, they offered the unique technology they had developed over centuries, which was far more advanced than most. New Aloes finally spoke. Your offer is interesting, D leader, but I have heard rumors. Some claim your race is too weak, too isolated to make meaningful contributions. And what of your relations with humanity? How do you plan to prove that your alliance would benefit all of us? Rettel felt the tension spike. This was the moment the D had to convince them that they were more than just a race in need of help. They had to show they had something to offer. In Returned the D leader stepped forward, his voice steady. We are a proud people, Alos. We may have been abandoned, but we still hold the knowledge and the power to change the galaxy. We do not seek to exploit others, we seek partnership, and we have something the galaxy needs: our technology, our knowledge, and our ability to build. Rettel noticed Ao's eyes narrow slightly. He was intrigued, but he wasn't convinced. The galaxy has seen many races rise and fall, Alo said, his tone colder now, but history tells us that many who seek alliances like this do so for their own benefit. How can we trust you? Rettel felt her heart race. This was the turning point. You can trust us because we offer you a choice. We're not here to control the D. Humanity stands by you not as rulers but as equals. We believe in a shared future. For a long moment there was only silence. Then Alo spoke again. I'll take your words into consideration, but the Mirak are not easily swayed. We will continue our discussion, but know this: trust is earned, not given. As the meeting drew to a close, Rachel felt a sense of cautious relief. The Mirak had not rejected them outright, but they were far from allies. The journey ahead was still long, and the future uncertain. The first step had been taken, but whether the D and humanity would succeed in forging lasting alliances remained to be seen. Days passed after the tense meeting with the Mir, and while the immediate future seemed uncertain, Rachel couldn't help but feel a growing sense of hope. There were still many hurdles to overcome, but humanity and the D had made their first significant step into the galaxy's complex and often unpredictable world of alliances. The Mirak, while cautious, had agreed to continue discussions, promising a full evaluation of the D's proposals. It wasn't a victory, but it was far from a defeat. Rachel knew that this was only the beginning of a much longer journey. The fate of the D depended on their ability to prove themselves in the eyes of the galaxy. The next few weeks were filled with constant communication and diplomatic efforts. The Talon 6 remained a hub of activity as representatives from different races slowly trickled in, each one bringing their own hopes and reservations. The D worked tirelessly alongside the humans, presenting their ideas, their technology, and their vision for the future. They did everything they could to show that they had something to offer the galaxy, something worth fighting for. Despite their best efforts, not all races were open to the idea of a D return. Some felt threatened by the advanced technology the D had promised, others simply didn't believe that the D could overcome their past mistakes. But there were also those who saw potential, those who believed that the galaxy needed new players, new ideas, and new solutions. One of the most surprising responses came from a relatively unknown race known as the Vari. The Vara were a reclusive species, one that had kept to themselves for centuries. Their planet was a remote, almost uncharted world, and their people had never shown much interest in galactic affairs. But after reviewing the TR's proposals, the Vari sent a message of their own, a message that surprised everyone. We see what you offer, the Viri ambassador had said, and we see the potential for growth. We are not afraid of change. If you are truly committed to rebuilding the galaxy, then we will support you. The Varar support was UN expected, but it was a much needed breakthrough. Their technology was more focused on ecological restoration and planetary preservation, which could complement the TR's more advanced military and industrial capabilities. This new alliance opened the door to further collaboration, and soon more races began to show interest. Meanwhile, The Mir, still cautious but intrigued, requested another meeting Rachel along. With the D leadership prepared for this next round of discussions with a sense of renewed purpose, the Talon 6 was a buzz with anticipation as the time drew near for the second face-to-face meeting with Aloes and his delegates. When the MK arrived, the atmosphere was still tense, but there was an unspoken acknowledgement that things had shifted. Isos, while still guarded, seemed more open than he had been before. I have reviewed the proposals. Aloes began, his voice steady, and I have seen the potential for something new. The galaxy needs change, but it also needs stability. We will support your efforts, D, but do not mistake our support for blind trust. The D leader stepped forward, grateful yet cautious. We understand our actions will prove our commitment to this alliance. Aloes, the negotiations resumed with more optimism than before. The Mir, though not fully convinced, were now willing to back the AR's efforts, knowing that humanity stood firmly behind them. The alliance was starting to take shape, and other races were beginning to follow suit. With each new ally, the D grew stronger. They continued to share their knowledge and resources, and in return they received the guidance and protection of their newfound allies. Slowly but surely they were carving out a place for themselves in the galaxy once more. But even as things began to improve, there was a lingering doubt in Rachel's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that the D's true test was still ahead of them. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, and not everyone would be so quick to accept them. Their enemies, those who had once turned their backs on them, still lurked in the shadows, waiting for any sign of weakness. Rachel knew that humanity's role in this story was far from over. They had stood by the D when no one else would. They had given them a chance, and in return they had earned not only new allies but a place in the galactic stage. Humanity's future was now intertwined with the Trares, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Rachel stood on the observation deck of the Talon 6, watching the stars stretch out before her, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be long and fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: humanity had found its place in the galaxy, and more importantly, they had helped an abandoned race find a new hope for the future. The stars were bright, and the dawn of a new era had begun.